Only a human was mad enough to tame the savage Vulpine Huntress. The old trade station hung near the edge of forgotten space like a dying beast. Its lights flickered. Its walls groaned. Every corridor smelled of rust, spilled chemicals, and too many broken promises. Travelers who passed through rarely stayed longer than a drink. They knew trouble lived here. Rogan Vale walked straight into that trouble. The human pushed through crowds of uneasy off-worlders. Drinks glowed in sick colors. Conversations stopped when he passed. People whispered his name, but not loudly. Humans were known for being bold, but Rogan had a reputation that made even hardened mercenaries step aside. He stopped at a private booth in the back. Something cold and reptilian waited there. A Saraxi Dominion envoy, its thin body wrapped in official armor, its eyes unblinking yellow. "You are the human," it said. Its voice sounded like metal sliding across stone. "Last time I checked," Rogan answered, dropping into the seat, boots up on the table. The envoy showed no emotion, but its jaw tightened. A hollow screen appeared between them. A blurry image of a white-furred figure mid-leap. Long claws. 4 pointed ears. Golden eyes filled with rage. A creature that looked half myth, half nightmare. "Her name," the envoy hissed, "is Lyra Ven. A starborn runaway. Dangerous. Unstable. She has destroyed 17 Dominion convoys. Killed crews. Stolen advanced tech." A number glowed under the image. 52 million credits. Even Rogan felt his heartbeat rise. 39 hunters had tried to capture her. None returned. Some ships were found torn open, floating like cracked eggshells. Others vanished completely. The envoy slid a small metal collar across the table. "A neural suppressor," it said. "Place it on her, and she becomes calm. Mind empty. Easy to transport." Rogan pushed it back. "I don't break minds," he said. "If you want her dead, I'll make it clean. If you want her alive, I'll carry her unconscious. But I'm not turning anyone into a puppet." The envoy tilted its head, confused. "You will die. Humans cannot hunt her." Rogan smiled. It was the kind of smile that got him banned from half the galaxy. "Maybe. But boredom will kill me first. This sounds more fun." The envoy finally nodded. Her last known location, a collapsed mining colony inside the Ravel asteroid belt. Gravity unstable. Wreckage everywhere. All who enter do not return. "Perfect," Rogan said. Hours later, he sat in the pilot chair of his ship, a battered freighter named Iron Spite, held together by stubborn engineering and bad decisions. The asteroid belt filled the entire front window, dark stones drifting in slow, deadly currents. Wrecked ships glimmered like bones under a dying star. Somewhere inside that labyrinth lived the creature who had made the Dominion tremble. Rogan leaned forward, eyes narrowing with excitement. "Let's see who you really are, Lyra." Iron Spite slid into the maze of rocks. Behind him, on the station, a bartender shook his head and muttered to no one, "Crazy human fool. She'll tear him apart." Inside the belt, the darkness shifted. Something fast. Something watchful. The first warning came too late. A cluster of debris struck Iron Spite's wing. The ship spun. Rogan fought the controls as gravity surged and vanished in wild waves. The freighter slammed into a ruined docking bay, metal screaming as sparks flashed across the hull. The ship skidded, crashed, and finally stopped. Smoke filled the cabin. Rogan exhaled. That was a bad landing. He unbuckled, grabbed his gear, and stepped toward the hatch. The moment it opened, a trap snapped shut with the force of a thunderclap. Welcome to Lyra's territory. And she was already watching him. Rogan stepped out of the ruined freighter and felt the strange gravity shift under his boots. One moment heavy. One moment light. The abandoned mining colony was broken in every way a place could break. Towers leaned sideways. Catwalks hung like torn webs. Dust floated in slow clouds, drifting toward the dark. He didn't get 3 steps before another trap fired. A shock cable burst from the floor, snapping like a lightning whip. Rogan rolled aside. It struck the metal behind him, melting a fist-sized hole in the wall. Someone had crafted this trap with skill, and with rage. The quiet around him was wrong. Too still. Too watchful. "She's here," Rogan whispered to himself. He pulled out his basic sidearm. No fancy Dominion guns. Just an old human-made pistol with a scratched barrel and a habit of surviving disasters. He clicked on a chest light. The beam cut through the dust and showed long claw marks across the floor. Deep gouges. Fresh. "She knew I was coming." He moved deeper into the bay, stepping carefully around piles of broken tools. Something shifted above him. Too quick to see. Too light to track. A whisper of movement against metal. Rogan froze. Then it happened, 3 traps triggered in perfect order. First, a pressure plate hissed. Poison mist filled the air, swirling toward him. Rogan slapped his rebreather on just before it reached his face. Second, a tripline released a rain of sharpened debris from the rafters. He dove under a fallen beam, hearing metal scream as it tore into the floor. Third, silence. A silence that felt like something was pulling breath out of the room. Rogan slowly lifted his head. A shape detached itself from the shadows on the ceiling. White fur. Long limbs. Foreears twitching at tiny sounds. Eyes burning gold. Lyra Venn, alive, furious, and faster than any hunting report had warned. She didn't fall. She launched herself. A blur of claws and teeth and raw instinct. Rogan could only raise his arm before she crashed into him. The 2 of them tumbled into a zero-gravity pocket. His body lifted. Her claws hooked into his jacket, spinning them through the air like tangled animals. She snarled deep in her chest, a sound that vibrated through his bones. They hit a metal wall where gravity suddenly returned. Hard. Rogan's lungs emptied. Lyra's weight pinned him like a steel beam. Up close, she was terrifying and strangely beautiful. Her fur shimmered silver. Her fangs gleamed like crystal. Her pupils changed shape constantly, adjusting to threats he couldn't see. Her claws pressed against his shoulders, not yet cutting, but ready. She leaned in, fangs inches from his face. Rogan didn't try to fight. Instead, he lifted his hand slowly, showing every movement, and brushed the edge of her upper ear. Gentle. Careful. A touch that said he wasn't prey, or at least wasn't afraid to act like he wasn't. Lyra froze. Her breathing hitched. Her ears twitched in confusion. Her pupils widened, confused by the simple contact. Rogan gave her a small smile. "I said I wanted to talk." Her response was not talking. She bit him. Hard enough to make him hiss in pain, but controlled. Not aimed at his throat. Not intended to kill. A warning. A message. When she pulled back, her fangs were stained with his blood. She stared at it, not pleased, not sorry, just studying. Learning him. Then, with a sudden kick, she pushed off his chest and floated into a nearby zero-gravity region. She landed perfectly on a crooked catwalk 20 meters above him. Her tail flicked once. Sharp. Precise. Then she vanished into the broken tunnels. Rogan stood slowly, gripping his bleeding shoulder. His heart pounded. His body shook, not from fear, but from the thrill of something he hadn't felt in years. That, he muttered, was a conversation. He limped back toward Iron Spite. Patched his wound. Tested his arm. Blood still seeped through the bandage. Rogan looked at the bite mark in a cracked mirror. It matches the stories, he murmured. Except the stories forgot to mention how smart she is. Outside, hidden high above the docking bay, Lyra crouched behind twisted pipes. She touched the old scars on her own neck, the ones forced on her long ago, and then looked at the blood on her claws. She could have killed him. But she didn't. That confused her more than anything else. Her ears flattened as she whispered a soft growl to herself. The next hunter, she told herself. The next one she would kill quickly. No hesitation. No curiosity. No, whatever that was. But deep inside, some part of her knew. Rogan Vale was not like the others. And for the first time in a very long time, Lyra Ven didn't know what would happen next. Rogan woke early the next station cycle, even though this broken colony had no real day or night. He didn't need sleep. His shoulder still ached from Lyra's bite, but he smiled at the pain. Pain meant he was still alive. And being alive meant the game wasn't over. He stepped out of Iron Spite and placed a small ration pack on the floor where she had first attacked him. Nothing fancy, just high-protein survival food. Soft enough for wounded creatures. Tough enough for starving hunters. He walked away without looking back. He didn't expect gratitude. He expected teeth. When he returned hours later, he found the pack torn apart, shredded into strips. Not eaten. Not even opened. Pieces were scattered like she was spelling out an insult. He laughed. Message received. The next day he tried something else, a small heat crystal he'd salvaged from a half-destroyed generator. Warmth mattered out here. A body could freeze in minutes in the wrong gravity pocket. He placed it in a spot where she would find it but where she'd have to work for it, just enough to make her curious. 3 cycles later, the crystal was gone. But the ration pack he left beside it was still untouched, sitting exactly where he had placed it. No claws. No teeth. Not rejected. Not accepted. A new message. Rogan scratched his chin. All right, Red. You like tools, not charity. So he adjusted his approach. Each day he repaired pieces of the ruined colony using scraps from the wreckage outside. Each night he left something for Lyra. Not food. Not kindness. Gifts with purpose. A damaged water recycler, cleaned and patched. A portable cutter restored with fresh power cells. A coil of titanium cable perfect for building traps. Even small metallic objects that reflected the dim red starlight, humans called them shine bait in the old days. She reacted to each one differently. Some items she destroyed. Some she kept. Some she ignored completely. But every reaction was a conversation. She was speaking to him in her own way. And he was learning her language. The colony itself became his teacher. Rogan walked its broken halls carefully, studying how she moved. Every trap she placed had a pattern. Every scratch on the wall had meaning. Every collapsed hallway told him she was faster, smarter, and more deliberate than any hunter report claimed. Twice she ambushed him again. The first time, gravity suddenly flipped while he was crossing a narrow corridor, sending him falling upward toward what used to be the ceiling. Lyra appeared from a vent above, claws extended, testing him. They clashed in silence. She darted away when he managed to land a glancing hit with his elbow. The second time, she lured him into a massive cargo bay filled with floating mining drones she had turned into lethal obstacles. The whole place felt like a maze built for one purpose, to see how long he could survive. He barely made it out alive. But every encounter ended the same way. Blood drawn. Distance kept. No killing blow. Like she was waiting. Studying him. Judging him. And Rogan found himself enjoying it more than he should. On the 15th cycle, he left her something different, a puzzle cube. A simple mechanical device made of shifting plates. The kind that required patience and awareness, not brute strength. Inside the cube, he placed only one thing, a tiny shard of polished mirror. He left it in the center of an open concourse under a flickering light and returned to his ship, turning on the external cameras. Lyra arrived almost an hour later. She approached like smoke. Silent. Slow. Ears rotating independently, scanning for sounds he couldn't hear. She circled the puzzle twice, always counterclockwise. Then crouched and touched it with one claw, curious. Rogan leaned closer to the monitor. She solved it faster than he ever had, her claws moving with delicate precision. The cube clicked open, revealing the mirror. She lifted it. And for a moment that felt painfully long, she just stared at her reflection. Rogan saw her ears lower, her breathing slow, her entire body going still. He felt something twist in his chest. She pocketed the mirror, left the puzzle box behind, and disappeared again into the ruins. Rogan exhaled. That meant something. The next gift he left was a weapon, a repaired slicer blade he'd reforged from salvaged metal. A tool worthy of her skill. This time, she didn't reject it. 2 nights later, she used it. Rogan entered a deep tunnel system to chart it, unaware she was watching from the shadows. When the tunnel collapsed behind him, a perfect, engineered collapse, he spun and found her already stepping out of the darkness. She had cut the emergency lights. The only glow came from the humming edge of the blade in her hand. She approached with the silent confidence of someone who owned these tunnels. Her eyes locked on him. Her breath low and steady. Rogan raised his empty hands. "You learning," he said softly, and thinking. "I like that." She snarled, not rage exactly, but something deeper and more complicated. She pressed the blade to his throat, and he felt the cold metal kiss his skin. This time, he didn't smile. This time, he waited. Lyra's hand trembled. Her pupils shifted. And something inside her changed. She didn't strike. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him with new eyes. Eyes that no longer saw an intruder. But a possibility. Then, without another sound, she leaped upward into the vents and vanished. Rogan let out a long breath, feeling the tiny cut on his neck. "Yeah," he said. "This is getting interesting." Rogan thought he had seen the worst of the colony. He was wrong. Days passed in a strange rhythm. He hunted for supplies. He dodged Lyra's tests. He repaired parts of Iron Spite and mapped the tunnels. Slowly, a pattern appeared on his scanner, energy signatures deep below the mining levels. Old. Buried. Still alive. It wasn't mining power. It was something else. One shift, he followed the readings. He cut through a collapsed wall with a portable torch, sweat running down his back, air tasting like metal dust. When the last slab fell away, a blast of cold air rushed past him. His wrist scanner screamed about radiation and unknown fields. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's never good." Beyond the broken wall lay a long corridor. Smooth metal. Different design. Cleaner lines. Dominion style. Emergency lights still flickered in a sick yellow tone. The air was thick but breathable. Rogan stepped inside. The deeper he went, the less the place looked like a mine, and more like a prison. He found rooms with restraints fixed to tables. Restraint marks on walls. Deep claw scratches that had torn right through reinforced metal. Broken glass tanks. Smashed equipment. It looked like something had exploded from inside the building itself. Or from inside the people. He moved slowly now, gun drawn, stomach tight. In one chamber, he found rows of empty cells. Some doors hung open. Others bent outward, twisted by huge force. Inside one, a single old collar lay on the floor. It looked like a rougher version of the neural suppressor he'd been offered. He kicked it aside. At the end of a central hall, he found a room full of screens and old paper records pinned to the wall. He stopped. Photographs. Dozens of them. They showed different species. Vulpine. Canine. Others he didn't recognize. All young. All bound. All labeled by codes instead of names. One section of the wall was different. 14 pictures of the same person. A young vulpine girl with soft brown fur and bright eyes. No scars. No implants. She was smiling in the first image, like she didn't know what was coming. The next picture showed her strapped to a table. The third showed machines drilling near the base of her skull. The later ones showed her fur bleaching pale. Her eyes growing hard. Her ears flattened in every shot. Metal ports dug into her neck. Notes scribbled along the sides. Subject V47. Response to neural storms, extreme. Violence rate, 97%. Obedience rating, unstable. In the last image, she was covered in blood, mid-attack. Someone's arm was visible on the ground. Severed. Rogan didn't need the label. He knew the face now. Lyra Venn. He turned to the nearby console. Surprisingly, it still had power. He forced access with an old hack routine and opened the main file. Project name, Starfang Initiative. Purpose, create enhanced predator-class guardians from fringe populations. Low diplomatic risk. Methods, forced neural conditioning. Drug storms. Pain loops. Obedience spikes. They had kidnapped children from outer worlds. Broken them. Rebuilt them. Turned them into weapons. Lyra wasn't a monster. She was the one who escaped. Rogan's jaw clenched. His hands shook on the console. He had seen corruption, war, smuggling rings. But this was different. This was cold. Careful. Scientific cruelty. They didn't fear her because she was wild. They feared her because she knew the truth. He was still staring at the screen when he felt it. That quiet shift in the air. The prickle at the back of his neck. He didn't turn. I was wondering when you'd come, he said softly. Lyra stood in the doorway behind him. Silent. Watching. Her fur almost silver-white now in the dim light. Her eyes locked on the images on the wall. Her ears flattened. Her tail went rigid. Her claws flexed once, scraping the frame. Rogan slowly turned to face her. I know, he said. His voice was low. I know what they did. She bared her teeth, but the sound in her throat wasn't a full snarl. It was something shaken. Wounded. Like part of her was ready to attack, and the other part was about to run. He lifted both hands carefully, palms empty. I'm not here to pity you, he said. I'm not here to fix what can't be fixed. But I am sorry. You didn't deserve this. Her gaze flicked from his face to the photos. To the consoles. To the broken cages. Then back to him. Rogan held up a small data drive he had pulled from the console. This is everything, he said. Names. Orders. Locations. Proof. We can send it to every independent station. Every free council. Make them see what the Dominion did here. Lyra's ears twitched. Her eyes narrowed. Her tail gave a small, uncertain lash. Or, Rogan added quietly, we can destroy it all. Wipe this place. Make sure no one ever repeats this. No files. No tools. No records. He stepped closer, slow and easy. Close enough now that he could see the old scars at the base of her neck. The places where metal had once been driven into bone. You've carried this alone for years, he said. You shouldn't have had to. You still shouldn't. Let me carry some of it. Just a little. For a long time, neither of them moved. The lab hummed softly, the last heartbeats of a dead project. Finally, Lyra stepped toward him. Each step looked like it hurt in a way that had nothing to do with her body. She reached out and touched his shoulder, right over the bite she'd given him days ago. Then she took his hand and pressed it gently against the scars at her neck. Her head bowed. Her eyes closed. Rogan felt something twist in his chest again. He squeezed her shoulder once. All right, he whispered. We don't run from this. We don't hide it. We use it. He held up the drive between them. We make them pay. Her golden eyes opened. This time, there was no confusion in them. Only agreement. Rogan spent the next few cycles trying to repair Iron Spite, but his attention kept drifting back to the data drive from the lab. Every time he looked at it, he saw Lyra's young face in those photos, soft fur, bright eyes, no scars. A life stolen. A weapon created. A survivor abandoned. She had stopped stalking him constantly. She still watched him from high vents, dark corners, or broken beams, but her presence felt different now. Less like a hunter waiting to strike. More like someone deciding whether she could trust him with the things she'd never spoken aloud. He didn't push her. He just worked. Repaired. Planned. And left small items in the corner of the concourse, tools she might need, nothing more. One cycle, while adjusting a cracked sensor dish on the ship's exterior hull, he heard a quiet scrape behind him. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. Lyra stood on the far side of the bay, watching him with a strange stillness. Not tense. Not ready to pounce. Just, present. You're getting predictable, Rogan called out. Her ears flicked once. Possibly amusement. Possibly annoyance. With her, it was always a coin flip. Then the station alarm shattered the silence. A deep, echoing wail. Ancient speakers struggling to function. Red lights flickering across the ruined colony like a warning heartbeat. Rogan froze. That wasn't one of Lyra's traps. He sprinted to Iron Spite's console. The screen lit up with new contacts. 2 Saraxi Dominion cruisers breaking into the asteroid field. Dozens of combat drones deploying. Scanning beams sweeping through debris. They found the lab, Rogan breathed. He didn't have to wonder how. Dominion tech was obsessive. They probably had trackers built into every machine they made. He looked up, and saw Lyra already approaching. Her shoulders stiff. Her fur bristled. A fresh wound bled down her side, meaning she had already fought the first wave. She grabbed his arm with a strength that almost lifted him off the ground. Hey, easy, he shouted. She didn't let go. Her body language was clear, move now. They sprinted into the tunnels just as the first drones entered the bay. Plasma fire streaked past them, melting walls and scattering burning debris. Iron Spite shook as cutters tore into the hull, peeling panels away like thin sheets of metal foil. Lyra dragged him through old shafts he had never explored, narrow passages where the gravity flickered, and the air felt thin. She knew every corner, every dead zone, every pocket of collapsed rock. He jumped beside her, ran behind her, slid when she yanked him forward. He trusted her entirely. Without her, he'd have been dead in minutes. They finally ducked into a small chamber sealed with a thick slab of metal plating she'd placed long ago, an emergency shelter only she knew. The drones swarmed the tunnels outside. Sharp metallic steps. Energy pulses. Searching. Inside the small room, both of them breathed hard. Rogan immediately checked the wound on her ribs. A plasma graze, deep, ugly, smoking at the edges. This is bad, he muttered. Hold still. She didn't growl. Didn't resist. She sank down to one knee, touching the floor for support. That alone told him how much pain she was ignoring. He opened his med pack and applied the tissue gel. The moment it met her wound, her muscles tensed like a wire about to snap. She didn't scream, but her claws dug into the metal floor with a long scrape. "You're tougher than a battleship hull," Rogan said softly. "But you're still allowed to hurt." Her ears twitched, a small motion, but he understood it now. Embarrassment. Vulnerability she rarely let anyone see. As he sealed the wound with a patch of synthetic skin, he spoke quietly, not raising his head. "This is on me. I triggered something in that lab. I missed a beacon, a sensor, something that told them someone survived." She lifted her head sharply, meeting his eyes. A low rumble vibrated in her throat, not anger at him, anger at them. Rogan wiped blood from his fingers. "I won't let them take you." Lyra reached out. Not grabbing. Not threatening. She rested her hand on his jaw, soft pads against his skin, claws retracted. It stunned him so much he stopped breathing for a moment. She leaned forward, close enough that he could feel her breath against his cheek. Not predator. Not prey. Something else between them now. He placed his hand over hers. "Yeah," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm not running." They stayed like that, holding each other as the drones searched the tunnels. Every step outside meant death if they were found. But for a few long minutes, neither cared. Lyra was the one to break the moment. She pulled back and tapped a small device strapped to her harness, a storage unit she'd stolen from his ship weeks ago. She pointed at it, then at the data drive he had taken from the lab. "You want to broadcast it," Rogan realized. "A message the Dominion can't bury." She nodded once, firm. "They will hunt us," he warned. "Forever." Another nod. "And you don't care." She blinked slowly. The closest thing to a spoken no she had. Rogan laughed under his breath. "You really are my kind of trouble." But she was already moving, pulling aside part of the stacked metal in the room, revealing a hidden stash of high-powered transmitter parts, scavenged from convoys she'd raided years ago. She had been collecting them for something big. She had been waiting. She needed someone who understood the galaxy. Someone who could stitch justice into chaos. Someone willing to stand beside her. Rogan swallowed, heart pounding. "All right, Red," he said quietly. "Let's make the whole Dominion scream." Lyra's ears tilted forward, sharp with approval. The battle outside grew louder. The revolution inside that room finally began. The Dominion cruisers didn't leave. They tightened their net around the asteroid like hungry predators closing in on wounded prey. Every hour, more drones slipped through cracks in the tunnels. Every hour, the gravity shifted harder, the air thinned more, the old mining colony groaning under the pressure. Rogan and Lyra had no time left. They worked fast. In a hidden chamber near the asteroid's northern ridge, Rogan pieced together a powerful transmitter from the parts Lyra had secretly collected over the years. Wires snaked across the floor. Metal plates sparked. Energy cells hummed with unstable power. Lyra stood guard, body tense, ears tracking every sound in the tunnels. Her wound had healed enough for her to move, but not enough for comfort. Every step sent a small, involuntary twitch through her side. She ignored it. "The moment we send this," Rogan said while connecting the final node, "they'll know exactly where we are." Lyra didn't answer with words. Instead, she moved behind him and rested a hand lightly on his shoulder. A steadying gesture. A promise. He smiled without looking back. "Then let's make it worth the trouble." He flipped the activation switch. The transmitter lit up with a light brighter than anything left in the colony. A deep hum spread through the walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. Rogan uploaded the data drive, every file, every photo, every confession the Dominion had buried. A loading bar crawled across the screen. 17%. 39%. 62%. Lyra crouched low, teeth bared, her hearing 10 times sharper than his. She could already sense movement in the outer tunnels. Heavy steps. Drone wings chopping the air. Metal claws scraping floor panels. 78%. 91%. Come on, Rogan hissed. A bright green indicator flashed. Transmission complete. The data shot out like a shockwave, hitting every comm relay in the sector before the Dominion could jam it. The evidence was free. Unstoppable. They had won the truth. But the Dominion wanted blood. A plasma bolt slammed into the transmitter, melting the top half in an instant. The chamber exploded in light. Rogan grabbed Lyra and dove behind a metal slab as the drone stormed in through the tunnel entrance. Dozens of them. Time to go. Rogan shouted. Lyra didn't hesitate. She grabbed him by the wrist and yanked him down the escape shaft she'd carved months ago. They slid through a narrow chute as explosions roared above them. Heat followed them like a living thing. The chute dropped them into a deep ventilation corridor. Rogan landed hard and rolled, coughing. Lyra hit gracefully beside him, already scanning ahead. But something was wrong. Her breathing wasn't steady. Her shoulders trembled. The old wound hadn't reopened, but the strain of fighting, running, and bleeding was catching up to her. Lyra, Rogan whispered, "You're hurt." She shook her head sharply. Not now. She pointed forward. The path wasn't long. If they made it to the outer docking ring, Rogan had a backup plan, a tiny emergency shuttle barely big enough for two. They ran. Drones swept in from behind them, firing plasma that sliced through metal walls. Rogan ducked a bolt that burned a glowing line across his shoulder. Lyra spun and took down a drone with a single leap, slicing its core in half before racing after him again. The docking ring came into view. Then Rogan froze. Iron Spite, their ship, was gone. Completely torn apart. Only twisted metal remained. Lyra's ears pinned back. Her tail stiffened. The Dominion wasn't leaving survivors. Rogan pointed to a small maintenance door. The escape pod. Go. The door led to a tiny emergency shuttle he had found days before, barely functional, but better than nothing. Lyra ran with him, but her steps slowed. Her breath hitched. A deep tremor ran through her limbs. When she reached the pod, she stumbled. Rogan caught her before she fell. Her eyes were unfocused for the first time since he had met her. Exhaustion. Pain. Overload. "Hey," he whispered, holding her face gently. "Look at me. Stay with me." She blinked slowly. Her hand lifted and touched his cheek. Claws soft. Movement fragile. Drone footsteps thundered closer. Rogan pushed her into the pod. "Strap in. I'll launch us." She grabbed his wrist, refusing to let go, golden eyes fierce even through weakness. He understood. "I'm not leaving you," he said. "Not ever." He entered the pod beside her and slammed the hatch shut. Drones clawed at it from outside. Metal dented inward. Sparks flew. Rogan hit the launch. The pod rocketed through a collapsing tunnel of fire and debris. The asteroid cracked behind them. Dominion cruisers fired wildly to stop their escape, but the pod spiraled into the debris field, bouncing between rocks, spinning violently. Lyra clung to Rogan's arm, eyes half closed. He pulled her close, bracing her as the pod shuddered again and again. "We made it," he whispered, though he didn't fully believe it yet. "We're alive. And they can't hide what they did anymore." The pod spun into open space, trailing smoke and flickering lights. The Dominion cruisers were shrinking behind them. The galaxy was waking up. But Lyra Van, scarred, hunted, powerful, was slipping into unconsciousness against his shoulder. Rogan held her tighter. "We're not done," he whispered into her fur. "Not by a long shot." The emergency pod drifted through open space, lights flickering, metal groaning with every rotation. Rogan fought the controls with one hand while holding Lyra steady with the other. She was barely awake. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling from exhaustion and blood loss. "Stay with me," Rogan whispered. "We're almost clear." The pod's navigation system finally pinged, weak, but alive. A nearby relay station had picked up the broadcast he and Lyra forced into the galaxy. Messages flooded the local network. Dominion accused of sapient torture. Leaked files show illegal experiments. Independent worlds demand investigation. Rogan allowed himself one breath of hope. They had done it. But the victory was already drawing fire. 2 Dominion interceptors broke formation and turned toward the pod, their engines blazing hot. They wanted to destroy the last witnesses before the truth reached more systems. Of course they did. Rogan tightened his hold on Lyra. "All right," he muttered. Round 2. He flipped the pod's power reserves into a single desperate maneuver, slingshotting through the debris field of the asteroid that had once been Lyra's prison. Shattered rocks drifted like ghosts. The Dominion ships followed, slicing through stone with precise plasma bursts. The pod barely fit through the gaps. The Dominion ships didn't. A large fragment smashed into the first interceptor. It spun out, trailing smoke. The second tried to correct course but clipped a massive chunk of rock and exploded in a silent burst of blue fire. Rogan's pod shot free into open space. He exhaled shakily. Then he looked at Lyra. Her eyes were half open, unfocused. She lifted a trembling hand and touched his chest. Her fingers curled weakly into his shirt. "A question. Are we safe?" Rogan brushed a thumb over her knuckles. "Not safe," he whispered. "But alive." Her ears twitched. "Barely. Enough." He guided the pod toward the nearest beacon. A neutral refueling station, small, underfunded, ignored by the Dominion. Perfect. The pod landed in a rough skid. Alarms blared. Smoke leaked from vents. But the hatch opened, and that was enough. Station workers, mostly small, bird-like Kirill, ran to help. One looked at Lyra and froze. Rogan stepped forward immediately, body tense. "She's with me," he said. "She's not a threat. She needs medical care." The Kirill medic saw the wound on her side, the scars along her neck, the exhaustion in her eyes. His feathers ruffled in sympathy, not fear. "This way," he chirped gently. Lyra sagged against Rogan as he carried her inside. She didn't fight it. Didn't push him away. Her head rested against his shoulder, breath warm and faint. Hours passed. Rogan didn't leave her side. He watched the medical lights move across her fur as the station's equipment patched torn tissue and stabilized her neural pathways. He held her hand when she whimpered in her sleep. He listened as news updates spread across the station, news he and Lyra had set in motion. By the next cycle, half the outer worlds had seen the files. The Dominion's careful lies were falling apart. And Rogan knew something important. Once the galaxy understood what Lyra represented, she would never be safe again. Not from the Dominion. Not from bounty hunters. Not from governments trying to study her. Not from those who feared what she had survived. So when her eyes finally opened, slow, groggy, but clear, Rogan leaned forward. "Hey," he whispered. "You're back." She blinked at him. Then at the room. Then back at him again. Her ears lowered, softening her expression in a way he had never seen. He offered his hand. She took it. No hesitation. He sat beside her on the medical bed. Lyra, the truth is out. But they'll hunt us now. Harder than before. She squeezed his fingers, gentle but firm. She knew. She accepted it. Rogan continued. We need allies. We need a ship. And, we need a plan that keeps you free. Really free. Lyra pulled herself up slowly. Her tail curled around his leg, not a trap. Not dominance. A choice. She leaned her forehead against his for a brief moment. Then she signed something with her hands, simple gestures she had used before. Together. Rogan smiled. Yeah. Together. Before he could say more, the station's intercom crackled. Attention. Incoming vessel. No identification. Moving fast. Rogan's smile faded. Lyra stood, unsteady but determined. Her claws flexed. Her ears sharpened toward the docking bay as if she could already hear danger approaching. He grabbed his pistol. Looks like the Dominion didn't learn their lesson. Lyra stepped in front of him, golden eyes blazing with new fire. Not fear. Not rage. Purpose. Rogan felt adrenaline rise as he moved beside her. All right, Red, he said softly. Let's start our next war. Lyra's tail flicked once. And the two of them walked toward the docking bay, side by side, ready to face whatever enemy came through the airlock next. Their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.